Hi, and welcome to my E3 roundup video where I'm going to tell you about all of the things I consider to be the highlights of E3 2012. Now, many of you will already know that I sent in an entry to Access TV for their presenter competition. Unfortunately, I didn't get to win. Now, this is a real shame because I would have loved to have been at E3 because I wanted to be on that show floor talking to all the gamers that were there. Also, I wanted to be backstage interviewing all of the developers and finding out what they were planning with their current games and maybe things, sneak peeks into the future. As it turned out, I didn't need my SingStar microphone after all. So, if I wasn't there, what can I tell you? Well, luckily, all of the conference highlights were streamed over the internet from various places, and many of them were on YouTube. So of course I watched the three major press conferences from the three main console developers. I also saw well, a few bits and pieces here and there about things from the show that kind of caught my attention and piqued my interest, and I'll talk a little bit about those at the end. But what I'm going to do is talk about each press conference and the highlights from it in the order that I watched them. And the first of those was the Xbox press conference. And unfortunately, it wasn't exactly the greatest show on earth. It had some interesting highlights, but it didn't even match up to the offerings of Sony and Nintendo, at least in my opinion. Now, one of the things that ran across all three major press conferences was having a second screen for your machine. And Microsoft's answer to this is Smart Glass. And this is where it allows you through, I guess, some kind of app that you install on your mobile device, be it your tablet or your smartphone, to allow it to interact with your Xbox. And I guess there's going to be some Connect functionality built in there as well. But the problem I found with it was, well, firstly, it allows you to control your Xbox. All of the menus and screens you can do with your tablet, but, well, I can do that already with my controller, or I can do it with Connect. Do I really need another device to control my Xbox? I don't think so. But as it's not going to cost me any more money to be able to use it, I can't really complain. But where it did seem to offer some glimmer of hope and something interesting was in that, well, you can use the second screen in-game. Now, be that, I think they showed one of the Madden sports titles where you'd be able to make some plays from your tablet, or maybe if you're playing a third-person shooter, you could prop up your tablet and have a more detailed map on there as you're playing against your friends. Yeah, that could be useful. And one thing that was kind of cool was using it in conjunction with television programs. So you're watching something through Xbox Live and, well, they use Game of Thrones as an example. You'll be able to watch Game of Thrones and also have information about that episode running simultaneously on your pad. So when it changes scenes, it actually changed position on a map to show you where you are in the world of Westeros, and also gave you information about what's happening. So, interesting. I'm keen to see where they're going to implement this. I mean, as it's a kind of, well, it's a last-ditch effort to get some more life out of the Xbox and to keep up with what we are doing, with what Nintendo's plans are for the Wii U, I feel it may be implemented half-heartedly. And I don't think it will be a patch on what Nintendo are going to do with their system, but we shall see. Microsoft might surprise us with where they're going with this one. So that was all we got as far as hardware went, but there were a few gaming highlights. Halo 4 obviously got a mention, which will interest and excite a lot of fans. Me, well, I wasn't too interested in it. Sure, it's going to be more of the same, but in a different environment. Master Chief's going to have some new toys to play with, but that doesn't really get me excited. But what did was the new Splinter Cell game. Now this, I think, looks fantastic and not too dissimilar from Assassin's Creed in many respects, and that's not that surprising as it's from Ubisoft, who also have that piece of IP under their belt. But what they've taken from Assassin's Creed is a lot of the slick movements and the quick kills and they've put it into a modern world setting. They've taken Sam Fisher, they've given him some new toys to play with and some new tricks up his sleeve, one of which looks really interesting, where he can pick out different targets and then execute a quick move where he shoots them or kills them in, I guess, various other ways, but does it all in quick succession, and then he can smoothly flow into other moves, jumping, climbing. It's all looking really good, and I'm not going to say it's something I'll rush out and get on launch day, but it's definitely caught my attention and something that wasn't on my radar before. There were some other points in this that were kind of up and down for Microsoft and their press conference. High points, well, we got to see a little bit more of Black Ops 2, a little bit more than what the trailer had to show. We got to see a bit of gameplay now, and it's shaping up rather nicely, but I think I'll leave my judgment till I've seen a little bit more of it. I'm a fan of Black Ops. I know a lot of people prefer Modern Warfare, but I loved Black Ops. And I'm talking about the single player campaign here. I think it's the best of the Call of Duty games, although I haven't played World at War, so I can't really say that with any authority, because a lot of people say that is the best one, and I guess until I've played it, I won't know which one's the best. But of what I've played so far, Black Ops is, and Black Ops 2 is looking rather tasty. Also of interest, I found The Stick of Truth, which is a new South Park adventure, which I think is, well, maybe not an RPG, but has RPG-light elements in it, because you can create your own character. You get to become the 5th member of the South Park gang and go on an adventure to save the town of South Park from God knows what. But I think it's going to be an interesting game, and if they can sustain the humour throughout the, I don't know, however long the game is, 6, 10, however many hours, if they can do that, which I think is the real difficult thing here, is taking that humour and making it last throughout a game, I think they're going to be onto a winner. So those were good points. For me, the highlight was seeing Tomb Raider, this origin story of Lara Croft, taking Lara Croft as I think a teenager or someone in her early 20s, and putting her in a really dangerous situation, shipwrecked and washed up on an island with lots of nasty people wanting to kill her. Looks really interesting, and I've got to say, the more I see of this game, the more I want it, and it will probably be, well, yes, it will probably be a release day purchase for me if it ends up being as good as I hope it's going to be. So although that was the high point, there was a low point, and not just a low point of the press conference, the low point of E3 as far as I was concerned. That was when Harmonix decided to roll out Usher to give an out-of-tune, off-key performance of some song that I've never heard before and hope to God I never hear again. And this was all in the name of Dance Central 3, and it made me realise that I want Dance Central 3 even less than I wanted it before, and I wanted it about that much in the first place. So that was quite a turkey, and luckily they put the Black Ops footage at the end to end on a high note, because that was just terrible. So that was it for Microsoft, and then I moved on to Sony. I think they were on the next day. And those boys rolled out a fantastic display. They really knew what they were doing with all of the projector screens and all of the sound, and it was a much slicker performance, and thankfully they had a lot of interesting games to back it up. And the first of which was something I'd been waiting to hear about, and that was Beyond Two Souls. And this is the new game from Quantic Dream, from David Cage and his band of wizards who seem to, well, in my opinion, have whipped up some fantastic games over the years. They might not churn them out at the rate of some other development studios, but what they put out is always interesting, and they're always trying to push the boundaries of not just the technology and the platforms they're working on, but the medium of video games itself. And this game looks like it's going to push the boundaries a bit further. They've definitely done that as far as performance capture goes. They've got a first-class actress in Ellen Page in the lead role, and they've got a story which is right up my street. It's a supernatural thriller about a girl. It follows the life of a young girl for 15 years as she, I guess, learns, uncovers and discovers her psychic abilities, and also there's something to do with a spirit there who she's in contact with, but I think as the gamer we never get to see them. It's a beautiful looking, well no, beautiful is the wrong word. It's kind of dark and serious looking, kind of moody, packed with quite a bit of action from what we've seen in the trailer so far. But I'm sure it's going to have a strong storyline, a lot of focus on character, and plenty of interesting sequences to keep the story moving. Now, I was very happy to see what they delivered, but in some small way I was a little disappointed, because after seeing that Kara tech demo, I was really hoping they'd take that and run with that story. I think there's a lot to be explored through the eyes of a creature that has just been created, something that's been given life and goes out into the world to explore for itself. And I think it would have been a very slow-paced game, and it would have been brave of them to bring out something like that. And hopefully they will eventually. Now, obviously they only released that tech demo a little while ago, and well, there's been a lot of positive feedback from it, and I think I'm sure they'll take this and go with it with their next game onto the next platform, because of course PS3 is at the end of its life. The next Quantic Dream game is bound to be on the PS4 or whatever Sony decide to call it. So yeah, for me that was one high point of the Sony press conference, but there were other really interesting things in there. One of which was Assassin's Creed 3, and this one came as a massive shock to me because I was fully prepared not to like this. I loved the first Assassin's Creed game, but I've slowly got bored with the series as a whole and thought that number 3 was just going to be them, you know, as it was with Brotherhood and Revelations, just churning out the same thing again and setting it in a slightly different environment. But it doesn't seem like they've done that. The new environment looks completely different. I'm sure it's going to change the style of gameplay quite a bit, but this addition of being able to captain a ship and have ship-to-ship battles and a bit of swashbuckling and getting on board and fighting the enemies on their other ship looks very cool, and that in itself is enough to make me want to pay attention and find out more about this game. Who knows? I doubt it will be something that I'll get on launch day, but it's something that I now want to play. And that wasn't even the best bit of the PlayStation press conference. There was more, and this is something that, oh man, I have wanted to play since I first saw a teaser trailer for it, and it's The Last of Us. I talked about this briefly in another video, and it's looking even better than when I last saw it, and we finally got to see some real gameplay in it, and man does it look amazing. It's like, well, the graphical style is like a beautiful graphic novel come to life. It looks like the graphics look like the characters are painted, and the lighting, the atmosphere, the sound effects, and the gameplay looks very cool. And from what the developers have said, it's linear, but each segment has more than one way to complete it. And the AI is very intelligent, so they'll respond in different ways to what you do. I mean, I thought it was very cool where the main character got a revolver and he was shooting at someone, and then it ran out of bullets, and the guy could hear the clicking of the gun, and he's like, oh, I know what that means, and he comes out to attack you because you've run out of bullets. I mean, I'm sure it was a somewhat scripted event, but it all worked together and it seamlessly fitted together. It was beautiful. So another reason to own a PlayStation 3, I think. So I'm glad I've actually got one, Can't wait till that comes out. I don't know how long we're going to have to wait for it. I hope it's out before Christmas, because that looks fantastic. Now, of course, as I'd said about the Xbox press conference, the idea of having a second screen, well, of course, Sony are trying to combat what the Wii U is doing as well. And of course, they've got the perfect device for it. They've got the PS Vita. And so what we're going to be seeing more of, according to them, are games where you can use the Vita as your controller and use the touchscreen functionality. I think they're calling it cross-controller. So any games that have that logo on it will be able to use both systems together, which is cool. Again, it's something that allows them to extend the life of the PS3, which in some ways is good, others are bad. Of course, we all want some new hardware. We've been waiting a long time for it, but I think Sony and the development teams that they've got are showing that there's still life left in the PS3, and maybe this PS Vita, PS3 combination will give us some new gaming experiences. And for those who are lucky enough to own both consoles, well then that's great. Unfortunately for me, I don't have a Vita, so it might be a reason to invest in one if they drop the price a little bit. The £200 price tag is a bit steep really for someone like myself who doesn't do a lot of handheld gaming. In fact, I hardly ever do it, so unless that price drops quite a bit, I don't think I'm going to be getting one anytime soon. Now, one of the things that really surprised me, and it's something I want to talk about briefly, although I'm pretty sure it's something I'm never going to buy, and that is Sony's new Wonderbook. Now, if you haven't seen this already, it's worth checking out, because it's an augmented reality piece of software. It uses the eye camera from PlayStation Move and a book with certain geometric patterns on it that the software can read and then recreate three-dimensional scenes like a pop-up book, but in a virtual environment. And what they showed off was the Book of Spells, like a Harry Potter. Well, actually it is. It's set in the Harry Potter world. You learn all about the spells from Harry Potter, and by using the Move controller you can cast spells and do all sorts of stuff that I'm sure little kids would be really excited about. The technology didn't work perfectly on the day, but I could see where they're going with it, and it could be very interesting. And if they get it to work seamlessly, I think Sony could have a winner on their hands, because I can imagine when I was a little kid, I used to love story time. I used to love my parents reading books to me, and it seems like the kind of thing that parents and children could enjoy together. So although I won't be buying it, I am interested to see where that technology goes. And there were a few other points of interest within Sony's press conference, but they weren't really things that interested me personally. For example, God of War Ascension, which looks really good, but I don't really have a lot of interest in the God of War series. And although I'm a really big fan of the original Far Cry game, I was bored senseless by Far Cry 3's seemingly, or at least they suggested, groundbreaking 4-player co-op. It just did not hold my attention. I was surprisingly bored by it. I hope the single-player game is of interest, because like I said, I really enjoy the original Far Cry, and Far Cry 2's quite interesting too. So I'll keep an eye on that and see where that goes, but I'm not hoping too much after seeing their demo. So that was it for Sony, or at least what I got from the Sony press conference. Their new hardware, and we finally got to get a really good look at the Wii U. And I must say, I'm intrigued.